Ben Hogan is remembered as the guy who figured something out that most players spend their whole careers chasing. And the wild part? The legends who actually saw him do it up close, they all say the same thing. Nobody hit it purer. Nobody worked harder. Nobody owned it more completely. Here's what they had to say. Let's start with the biggest claim in the room. Gary Player has played alongside and competed against almost every great golfer of the modern era. And when he's asked about ball striking, he doesn't hesitate to tell us who's the best.
But Hogan was the best striker from tee to green that ever lived without a question, and had the most perfect golf swing, because he hit millions of balls. And when I see what people teach today, some of it is such hogwash. I see some guys on the regular tour now. I promise you, if they did what Hogan suggested and understood, that's the other thing. I haven't met anybody that really understood what Hogan, and I was lucky to be around him to hear a few things that I never heard in my life. If some of these players that are playing today did that, they'd be so much better. So much better. This man spent his life, he didn't have children, he spent his whole life hitting golf balls every day and working like a Trojan.
That's the core of the Hogan story. And it's not really a myth. Every person who saw him play said the same thing. That swing wasn't a gift. It was the result of deliberate, relentless practice. Now, if you want to understand just how high that standard really is, listen to Tiger. Tiger Woods once said something that stopped the golf world in its tracks. He said, "Only two players have ever truly owned their swings, Mo Norman and Ben Hogan. I want to own mine." This came from Tiger, arguably the most mentally locked-in golfer ever, looking at Hogan and saying, "That's what I want." Here's where the Hogan story gets a little more human. Most people picture him as cold, distant, the kind of man who'd rather hit balls alone than talk to anyone. Jack Nicklaus tells a different story.
Ben walked in the locker room, and he says, "Hey, fella," which he called everybody fella. I said, "Hey, fella, how you doing?" He says, "You got a game?" I said, "Mr. Hogan, no, I don't." He says, "Well, let's go play." So we played a couple practice rounds at the Masters that year, and then the U.S. Open, the same thing happened at Oakland Hills. We played a couple practice rounds there. We became good friends. So he was obviously he saw something in a young kid. Matter of fact, the Masters I won in '66, I played with him in the last round there. I played a lot of tournament golf with Ben and enjoyed it very much. And he was a great person to watch.
And here's the part of the Hogan story that doesn't get told nearly enough. He got nervous too. Tom Watson shares a story about having lunch with Hogan in the mid-'80s, and somewhere between the meal and the conversation, Hogan admitted that he felt intense nerves in competition. Real, uncomfortable nerves. Watson's takeaway from that conversation is the thing worth holding on to.
I did have the opportunity to have lunch with him one time back in the middle '80s, and I had the opportunity to ask him a couple of questions there at the end of the lunch, and he was just as gracious as possible. We just had a wonderful conversation. And so I asked him the question. I said, "How nervous were you when you played in competition?" And he looks at me, that smile stopped like this, and he got serious. He said, "Tom, I was so nervous, I was jumping out of my skin." And I said to myself, wow. Yeah, if this is the Iceman, the guy that showed no emotion, who people said he was rock solid under pressure, which he was. When he said he was that nervous, I took that to heart. And when people ask me how did I kind of learn how to play under pressure, I learned how to play under pressure strictly by experience, by putting myself in positions to win under pressure. You're always under pressure when you start a tournament.
That's Hogan in one lesson. Performing under pressure doesn't mean feeling nothing. It means learning, over years and over thousands of rounds, how to play through it. Control isn't a personality trait, it's a skill you earn. Now for a technical one, and it's simpler than you'd think. Jason Duffner breaks down what actually made Hogan's swing work, and it wasn't speed.
well. But I think the one thing you can take from Ben Hogan's golf swing is he showed and tried to express to people to have shaft lean and not be steep, and that was with a lot of body rotation. If you can put in chest rotation and lean the shaft, and that was his kind of.
That's why Hogan's swing still gets studied, because it's functional and it works. Let's hear what Jackie Burke has to say about Hogan's swing, specifically his flight visualization.
Once Ben Hogan can create a flight in his mind, he can take a stick and get it. But he first had to see the flight. There's days out there that you can't see the shot, that you cannot see anything. There's just some things that are going wrong. But on the days that he could see the trajectory, he was pretty hard to beat. He could put the ball awfully close to the hole.
That's not just talent at work, that's command, total command. Tom Kite also explains something important about why Hogan resonates with so many pros, not just the ones who watched him play, but the ones who came after. Hogan wasn't the guy who made it look effortless from the start. He struggled early, he grounded out, he worked with a relentlessness that most people couldn't sustain. And Kite says, plainly, that Hogan's discipline became the blueprint for his own career.
Mr. Hogan, the game never came easy to him, not like it did with Nelson and Snead. Those were two really, really great athletes, and the game came relatively easy to them. To Hogan, it was a struggle, and he had to battle through it, and it was late in his career or late in his life, his sporting life, before he really started having some success. And once he did start having that success, he never let go. I use that a lot as my blueprint. You look at me, I'm not a great athlete or anything. There's certainly a lot better athletes, bigger, faster, stronger than I am. But I used a lot of what Mr. Hogan did as kind of a blueprint for my game. To, if you go at it really hard and really study the game as much as you can and try to build on your strengths and try to correct your weaknesses, well then, you're going to have some success. So he was a great role model for me.
This is why Hogan keeps coming up, decade after decade. He's not just a name on a trophy. He's proof, living, documented proof, that you can build something great on discipline alone. And that work ethic, it's still getting passed down. Bryson DeChambeau says a Hogan quote hit him as a teenager, and it stuck. He says, "It was a quote from Hogan that I got early in my teens." Hogan said, "Every day that you're not working is another day somebody else is getting better than you. And I took that to heart." End quote. Now here's a quote that carries extra weight because of who said it. Sam Snead, Hogan's great rival, another all-time great, didn't hand out praise easily. But when it came to Hogan, he was clear. Sam said, "Nobody would have been better prepared than Ben. I can tell you that. He was a superb player who knew how to get the most from himself." Notice what Snead is actually saying. Not that Hogan was the most talented, not that he had the best technique, that he was the most prepared, the most self-aware, the best at pulling everything he had out of himself when it counted. From a rival, that's as honest as it gets. And if you need one chapter that makes Hogan feel genuinely larger than the sport itself, it's what he did after the crash. In 1949, Hogan and his wife were hit by a Greyhound bus. He nearly died. Doctors weren't sure he'd ever walk again, let alone play golf. But he played again. In 1950, at the US Open at Marion, he needed a par on 18 to force a playoff. He pulled out a 1-iron. He hit the shot. That photo frozen mid-swing, the crowd pressed in on both sides, became one of the most iconic images in the sport's history. So when players are asked about Ben Hogan, they always end up in the same place. Not just ball striking, not just the work ethic, not just the trophies, but ownership, owning the swing. owning the nerves, owning the preparation. And when Tiger Woods uses your name as his personal benchmark for what it means to truly own a golf swing, that's not nostalgia. That's a standard that's still standing.